It's 2:47 in the morning on March 3rd, 2026, and I'm sitting here in my living room in the dark with my phone propped against a pillow, and my hands are shaking. My hands are actually shaking as I try to record this, and I've been sitting here for almost an hour trying to decide whether to do this, trying to talk myself out of it, actually. Telling myself it's the middle of the night, people don't need to hear from you at 2:47 in the morning, go back to sleep. But I can't go back to sleep. I have tried. I went back to my bed twice and I just lay there and I knew. I knew I was supposed to get up and tell you what happened tonight. So here I am. And I want to be upfront with you. I know how this is going to sound. I know that for some of you, a video that starts with someone saying, Jesus appeared to me and showed me a vision is going to be the moment you click away. And I understand that. I do. I've had moments myself where I've been skeptical of that kind of language, but I am genuinely asking you to give me a few minutes, because what I saw tonight, what he showed me, is not something I can hold on to alone. And if even one person watching this is the person this was meant for, then it is worth every bit of discomfort I feel right now, sitting in the dark talking into a camera at 2:47 in the morning. So let me start right here. If you are watching this at any hour, whether it's the middle of the night where you are or the middle of the afternoon, I don't think you clicked on this by accident. I've learned not to believe in accidents when it comes to things like this. There is something in you that was drawn here. Maybe you've been restless. Maybe you've been praying and feeling like heaven is quiet. Maybe you've been going through the motions of your faith and feeling a low-grade distance that you can't quite name or explain. Maybe you're wide awake right now yourself and you can't figure out why. I think you're here because you're supposed to be, and I think what I'm about to share is part of the reason. Here's what I need you to do. I need you to stop scrolling. Stop the other tabs. If you're lying down, sit up. If you're distracted, get somewhere you can actually be present for the next little while. Because in this video, I'm going to take you through 7 things, 7 specific things that Jesus showed me tonight in this vision. And I'm going to tell you all 7. I'm not going to hold anything back, but I need you to hear them in order because each one leads to the next one. And the 7th one, the last thing he showed me before the vision ended, is the thing that made me weep for 20 minutes on my living room floor. That's not an exaggeration. 20 minutes. And I'm going to tell you what it was. But you need to walk with me to get there, so stay. Please stay. Let me tell you how tonight started. I had gone to bed around 11, maybe 11:15. Nothing unusual about the evening. I'd had a normal day, spent some time in the Word before bed the way I try to do, prayed a little, nothing dramatic, just regular quiet time, and I turned off my lamp and I remember thinking, okay, good, I'm tired, this is going to be a good night's sleep, and I genuinely expected that. I had no reason to expect anything else. I don't know exactly what time it was when I woke up. I know it was before 2 because I lay there for a while before I finally picked up my phone and looked and it said 2:34. But I had been awake for a bit before that, and the way I woke up, it wasn't startling. It wasn't like a noise or a jolt. It was more like I just became conscious, fully and immediately conscious. No groggy transition, no half-sleep state, just completely awake. And I lay there in the dark, and the first thing I noticed was the room felt different. I know that sounds like something someone says in a movie, and I almost hate saying it because of that, but I don't have a better way to describe it. There was a weight to the room, a thickness to the air that wasn't there when I went to sleep, and not an ominous weight, not a frightening one. Something more like the atmosphere before something significant happens, like the air just before a storm, but inside the room, inside me. I lay still for I don't know how long, a minute maybe, and my heart was going fast, not panicking, just alert, aware, and then I heard it, or felt it, both at the same time. It's hard to say where the voice came from because it was simultaneously in the room and inside me, like the words existed in 2 places at once, and it said, "Get up, I have something to show you," clear as anything, "Get up, I have something to show you," and I knew whose voice it was. I knew in my bones. I got up, I went to my living room, and I sat down on the floor, which I don't normally do. I don't know why the floor, it just felt like where I was supposed to be. And I sat there in the dark and I said, okay, I'm here, show me. And that's when it started. That's when the vision opened and I wasn't in my living room anymore. I was somewhere else entirely. I was standing in a field, an open prairie, enormous and wide, and the grass was tall and golden, the kind of grass that's been there a long time, deep-rooted grass, the kind that bends in the wind but doesn't break. And it was moving. Everything was moving. There was a wind coming from somewhere I couldn't identify, just a consistent pressing wind that made the whole landscape sway in waves. And above me was the sky, and I want to try to describe this sky to you, but I already know I'm going to fall short. Storm clouds, massive, dark, churning storm clouds in every direction, not just in front of me or on the horizon, in every direction at once, like the storm was already surrounding the field. And the clouds were deep purple and gray and that kind of green-black that only shows up in the most serious weather. And they were moving, rotating slowly, enormous and unhurried in a way that made them feel unstoppable. And through them, cutting between the darkness, there were these shafts of golden amber light, light that had that urgent, almost desperate quality that late afternoon light gets right before everything changes. And the combination of those two things, the dark churning clouds and the burning gold light coming through them, was the most arresting thing I have ever witnessed. Real or vision, it was beautiful and terrifying at the same time. And I stood in the middle of it, and I understood without being told that I was standing at the threshold of something, that I had been placed here specifically to see what was coming. And I had this sense, deep in my chest, that the field and the storm and the light were not random imagery. They were a picture of exactly where we are in history right now. The storm is real, the light is real, and we are all standing in that field, whether we know it or not. And then he was there, standing beside me. Just beside me. I didn't see him appear. He was just there when I turned. And I want to try to tell you what he was like because I feel like I owe you that attempt, even knowing that words are going to be inadequate. The first thing I noticed was his eyes, because they were looking at the storm, and the eyes of someone looking at something they made and love and grieve simultaneously. That's the closest I can get to describing what I saw. Present. Seeing. Not distant or removed, but seeing everything, the immediate and the eternal, all at once. And there were tears on his face, just quiet tears running down, and he wasn't wiping them away, he was just letting them be there, and he put his hand on my shoulder, and the weight of that hand, I felt it through my whole body, and he said, "Watch. I need you to see what I'm about to show you. So watch." And that was the beginning of the 7 things. The first thing he showed me was a clock. It appeared in the sky, above the storm clouds, not like a clock on a wall, but like something that had always been there, and I was only now seeing it. And it was large. It filled a significant portion of the visible sky. And the face of it was clear, the hands were visible, and what I noticed immediately was that the hands were moving too fast. Not just a little fast, they were spinning, racing around the face at a speed that made no sense, faster than any normal movement of time would permit. And I watched it for what felt like a long moment, and then he spoke. He said, "Time is not what most people think it is right now. They are living as though there is more of it than there is. They are planning in decades, and I am moving in moments." He said, "What seemed distant is now at the door. What felt far away is now close enough to touch." And I felt something drop in my chest when he said that. Not dread exactly, but the weight of it, the finality of it. Like a confirmation of something I think I had suspected but had been comfortable not looking at directly. The clock kept going, faster and faster, until the hands were just a blur of movement, and then it was gone. The sky was just the storm again. Now I want you to sit with the first thing for a moment before I go to the second, because I think the clock represents something that most of us, myself included, are not taking seriously enough. We have this quiet assumption, most of us, that there is always more time to get serious about our faith, more time to have the conversation we've been putting off, more time to lay down the thing we've been carrying that we know we shouldn't still be carrying, more time to go deeper, more time to make the change we know we need to make. And he was not saying run around in a panic. He was saying stop assuming, stop living as though the runway is longer than it is, because the clock is going. It has always been going. And what he showed me was that it's going faster now than it ever has. And the people who don't know that, the people operating on an assumption of endless time, they are the most vulnerable to being unprepared. The second thing appeared almost immediately after the clock disappeared. The storm clouds shifted just slightly, and in the opening that formed between them, I saw people. Not a few people, multitudes, stretching out in every direction as far as the vision would let me see. And they were doing the things people do, going to work, sitting in traffic, eating at tables with their families, looking at phones, laughing, shopping, fighting, crying, going to bed, waking up, living their lives. And I stood there watching this river of humanity just flowing and flowing, and not a single person was looking up. And he said to me, "Look at my people." And I understood that he was not referring only to unbelievers. I looked again and I could see it. Some of these people had his mark on them. They were his. They carried his name. They went to buildings with crosses on them. They listened to worship music in their cars. They put scripture on their walls and their social media, and still they were not watching. They were not expecting. They were not living with the orientation of people who believe the one they love is about to come home, and the grief on his face when he said it was something I will not forget. Look at my people, he said. It is not the ones who never knew me who grieve me most in this moment. It is the ones who know me and have grown comfortable. They have the relationship, but they have lost the urgency. They have the love, but they have lost the watch. And I want to ask you something directly. Are you watching? Not in the frantic, fearful, end times obsessed way that produces anxiety rather than faith, but in the steady, consistent, background awareness way of a person who genuinely believes that today could be the day, that he is close, that what was promised is about to be delivered. Because he said it clearly and simply. He said, "My people must watch, always, consistently, not when the news cycle reminds them, always." With the posture of someone who is genuinely expecting the one they love most. The third thing shifted the nature of the vision. The storm clouds lowered. They came down noticeably closer to the field, close enough that I could feel the pressure of them, feel the change in the air, and in the darkness of those lowered clouds I started to see movement, shapes. Not clearly at first, just the sense of things moving within the darkness, and he said to me, "There are things being released in this season that have not moved in this way before, not more of what has always been here. New things, old things permitted to move in new ways. Ancient things that were restrained are being released into this specific moment in history." And I felt the ground vibrate under my feet. Just a low-frequency vibration, not an earthquake, more like a pulse, like the earth itself was aware of something approaching. And he said, "This is a season that requires discernment like no season before it. Things that appear good will not all be good. Voices that sound familiar will not all be trustworthy. The enemy knows the hour, and he will operate with a precision in this season that he has not operated with before." And then he said something I want you to write down if you can. He said, "The people who will navigate what is coming are not necessarily the most gifted or the most educated or the most experienced in ministry. They are the people who have learned to hear my voice so clearly that no other voice can convincingly imitate it." And right after he said that, he showed me two people in the field, a man standing at one end and a woman at another, and I could see both of them clearly from where I stood. The storm was pressing against both of them equally, the same wind, the same pressure, the same conditions. But the man was not moving. His feet were planted deep, and the wind was hitting him hard. You could see it on his face, the effort of it, but he was immovable. And the woman was stumbling, reaching out for something to hold on to, and there was nothing. Not because she was weak or foolish or less faithful, but because the storm had found her unprepared. And he said, "The difference between these two is not faith in the way most people define faith. The difference is what they did with the quiet seasons. One went deep when there was no immediate pressure to go deep. One waited for pressure to motivate depth. And now the storm is here and the difference is visible." I need you to hear that. Going deep when there's no crisis pressing you toward it is the hardest kind of faithfulness. Our flesh wants to coast when things are okay and scramble when they're not. But the root growth happens in the coasting seasons. The foundation gets built when it's quiet, and the storm doesn't ask you whether you're ready before it arrives. It just arrives. The fourth thing he showed me made me uncomfortable. I want to be honest with you about that. In the vision, the field dissolved for a moment, and I was suddenly inside a building. A large building like a modern church or an auditorium, and it was full, completely full. And worship was happening. The lights were up, the sound was powerful, the musicians were excellent, people had their hands raised, some were weeping. From any external perspective, it looked extraordinary. It looked alive. And then he let me see what he was seeing. He shifted my perspective, and I was looking at the same room differently. And in many of the people, not all of them, but in many, I could see their inner state. And what I saw was a dimness, a low flame, not darkness, not absence, just a flame that had once been higher and was now burning low. And some of them didn't even seem to know it. They were doing the right things, making the right sounds in the right posture, and the flame was low. And he said to me, "There is much performance where there should be encounter. There is much activity where there should be intimacy. They have kept the form. In many cases, they have lost the fire." And then he said something I want to give you word for word because it has been echoing in me ever since. He said, "I am not impressed by the size of the gathering. I am looking at the condition of the heart. I am not moved by the quality of the production. I am moved by the sincerity of the surrender." He said, "I am calling my church back, not forward to more innovation. back, back to the place of desperate need, back to the prayer that isn't a performance but a conversation, back to the worship that doesn't need perfect conditions to happen because it is happening from the inside out, regardless of any external circumstance. And I want to say to you gently but directly, if you are in ministry, if you lead worship or preach or serve in any capacity, that word is specifically for you, not as condemnation, as an invitation. The question is not, are you doing the right things? The question is your heart still broken before Him? Is the flame still burning from the actual inside? Because He knows the difference even when we have learned to blur it. The fifth thing, this is where I found the most hope in the vision. After the building disappeared and I was back in the field, I noticed the quality of the light changing. Not the storm that was still churning and low, but the amber light coming through it was intensifying, growing brighter, more saturated. And there was an energy in the atmosphere that hadn't been there before, a warmth, like something was waking up under the surface of everything. And He said, a new wave is coming, not a continuation of what has already been. A new wave, different in character, different in reach. And He showed me faces, just faces, one after another, people I didn't recognize, and they were not the faces I would have expected. Someone covered in tattoos, tears running down their face, hands reaching towards something I couldn't see. Someone in what looked like a prison uniform, on their knees, people from backgrounds and industries and cultures that are not typically associated with the church. And they were coming. There were so many of them, coming with hunger, coming with rawness, coming without pretense because they had just encountered Him and they were completely undone by it. And He said, I am going to bring people to myself from places my church has written off, from backgrounds my church has given up on. And the question I am asking my people is this: will you make room? Will you expand? Will you be willing to look less organized and more alive? Because what is coming is not going to fit neatly into existing structures, and those who insist on the structure over the spirit are going to miss what I am doing. And He said, this wave will not be manufactured or marketed or organized into existence. It will simply be what happens when I move, and it will be unmistakably me. The sixth thing. I have to collect myself a little before I tell you the sixth thing. In the vision, the storm was very close by this point. The clouds were so low, I felt like I could almost reach up and touch them. The wind was strong and constant, and He turned to me, and for the first time since the vision began, He wasn't looking at the field or the sky. He was looking directly at me, just at me, and I felt seen in a way that I cannot fully describe. Like every layer I had built up was transparent, not stripped away painfully, just transparent, like He could see straight through to whatever I actually am underneath all of it. And He said, I am looking for a people who will carry my presence into what is coming, not just my message, my presence, not information about me. He said, there is a difference between people who know about me and people who carry me. The ones who carry me, you can feel it when they walk into a room. You can feel it when they speak, not because of their charisma or training or talent, because they have spent so much time in my presence that my presence has saturated them. They are, He said, walking temples. The presence that once required a building is now contained in yielded human beings who have said yes to me completely. And He said, this is what I am inviting every person who hears this message into, not a higher level of performance, a deeper yes, a more complete surrender, a willingness to be emptied of your own agenda and your own comfort so that I can fill you. And the people who have said that yes are the people who will carry something into the storm that cannot be manufactured or faked or artificially produced. Because what the coming storm requires is not more good content or more inspiring messages. It is me, moving through people who have made enough room for me to actually move. And now, the seventh thing. I want you to hear me when I say this. I am not someone who exaggerates for effect. I'm not building suspense for its own sake. When I tell you that what He showed me next took my breath away and then made me weep for 20 minutes, I am telling you something that actually happened. In my living room, on my floor, at some point well past 2 in the morning on March 3rd, 2026, I wept for 20 minutes because of what I'm about to tell you. After He said what He said about presence and carriers and the complete yes, I felt something shift in the vision. Not a subtle shift, a massive, total, everything at once shift. The entire sky changed in a single moment. Every cloud, every swirling darkness, all of it was still there, still churning. The storm had not gone anywhere. It had not calmed or diminished. But through the very center of it, directly above the field, directly above the exact point where I was standing, the sky split open. I don't have a better word for it than that. Split. Like something behind the visible world had pressed through. Like the veil between what is seen and what is eternal had thinned down to nothing and then torn. And the light that came through that opening was not sunlight. It was not any light that exists in the created world. It was something else entirely. Living light. That's what I kept thinking while I stood there. This light is actually alive. And it had weight to it, warmth to it, and a sound, not a loud sound, more like a tone, a note that was somehow below the range of hearing and inside the chest at the same time. And when it appeared, everything in the field, every blade of grass, every churning cloud, the ground under my feet, me, we all turned toward it. Not by choice exactly, unavoidably. Like the whole of creation recognized what it was seeing and responded without being asked. And then the sound changed. It deepened, expanded, and I knew, in a way I have never known anything, that this was his voice, not the intimate, quiet voice that had been speaking to me throughout the vision. Something older, vaster, the voice that spoke the world into existence, the voice that mountains know, the voice the sea obeys. And it was not words, not a sentence I can write down and hand to you. It was more like every word he had ever spoken, compressed into a single sound. Every promise, every declaration, every I will never leave you, every fear not, every I have called you by name, gathered into one moment of sound that existed for just a breath and then was gone. And he was beside me again, and he was weeping, but differently than before, not the grief tears from early in the vision. These were different. The tears of someone watching something they have waited a very long time for finally beginning to arrive. And he said, "This is what I have been working toward from the very beginning. Every generation that cried out to me, every prayer that felt like it went unanswered, every person who held on to faith when the world gave them every reason not to, every tear ever cried in the dark by someone who believed when it made no sense to believe. I have been working toward this, and it is closer than anyone knows. It is close." And then he said, "I am asking my people to be ready, not afraid, ready. And I want you to understand that those two things are not the same. Fear and readiness are not the same posture. Fear contracts and hides and waits for the worst. Readiness leans forward. Readiness is present and surrendered and expectant. Ready means nothing to scramble for when the moment comes. Ready means already his, already yielded, already oriented. Ready means you have been living all along like you knew he was coming because you did. The vision ended there, just like that. I was back in my living room, on the floor, and I started weeping and I could not stop. So what does this mean for you, specifically, practically, in the days ahead? Let me give you 4 concrete things to carry away from this. First, this is not the time to be coasting. Whatever in your life is creating distance between you and him right now, whether it's a compromise you've been tolerating, a door you've been leaving open, a habit that has become a substitute for the real thing, a bitterness you have been protecting, a comfort that has become more important than him, this is the season to address it, not to perform better, to actually surrender it. He is not interested in your improved behavior while your heart stays unchanged. He is interested in your actual heart, and he knows the difference between surrendered and just better behaved, even when we have learned to blur that line ourselves. Second, get into his actual presence, not content about his presence, not worship music in the background while you do other things, his actual presence, which means prayer that is not a list of requests, but just you and him and stillness. Prayer that feels unproductive at first, especially if you're not used to it. But that builds something over time that nothing else builds. Because in the vision, everything came back to depth, the deep roots, the deep foundation, the deep yes. And depth is not built quickly. It is built in the repeated daily choice to go to him first, before the phone, before the news, before everything else. Third, look up. Literally go outside and look at the sky. Let the sky remind you that there is a reality above and beyond what you can see and manage and control. Let it recalibrate your perspective. Be the person who walks through their ordinary day with a background awareness that everything could change today. Not anxiously, just watchful, just genuinely expecting him, just living with your face turned toward the direction he is coming from. Fourth, stop waiting for better conditions to share your faith. The wave he showed me of people coming doesn't arrive without people already in place to receive them, and those people are already in your life. The person you've been meaning to talk to, the family member who is drifting, the friend who is struggling, The conditions are not going to get more convenient, so do the thing you've been putting off. Have the conversation. Send the message. Make the invitation. Today, I want to lead you in a prayer now, a real one, not a performance. Before I do, I just want to ask you to be honest with yourself for a moment. Where are you actually with him right now? Is there any distance you've been comfortable with? Any compromise you've been defending? Any flame that has gotten low? Just sit with that for just a second. You and him. Ready? Let's pray together. Father, we come to you right now, wherever each person listening to this is, whatever time it is for them, whatever season they're in, and we say we want to be ready, not just believing. Ready. We don't want to be the people in the vision whose eyes were on everything else. We want to be watchers. We want to be carriers. We want to be the people who go deep in the quiet seasons so that when the storm arrives, we are standing. We confess where the flame has gotten low. We confess where we've been coasting. We ask you not to judge us for it, but to restore us because of it. We surrender tonight whatever has been between us. We say yes to the deeper yes you are inviting us into, not because we have it all together, because you are worth everything, because you are close, and the only response that makes sense is to be found fully yours when you arrive. Search us, change us, fill us. Let us carry your presence into what is coming. In Jesus' name, amen. If this touched something in you tonight, I want to ask you to share it, not for my sake, because he told me clearly when the vision ended, go and tell what you have seen. Don't hold it to yourself. Give it away. There are people in your life who need to hear exactly this, and they are not going to find it unless you put it in front of them. So think right now, who is that person for you? The one who is drifting, the one who is going through the motions, the one who needs someone to say, hey, wake up, he is closer than you think. Send them this right now, before you put your phone down, before you close this tab, before you move on, because you don't know what tomorrow holds. And that's exactly what tonight has been about. It is now 4:22 in the morning on March 3rd, 2026. I've been sitting here for more than an hour and a half trying to find words for what happened tonight. And I'm going to be honest with you. I still feel like the words have not done it justice. The vision was more than language. His presence was more than anything I can put into a sentence, but I have given you everything I have, and I will not apologize for sharing it, even knowing that some people will dismiss it. Because the people this is for, the people who were supposed to find this tonight, I believe they are finding it. I believe that is you. I genuinely do not believe you are here by accident. There is more coming. He told me before the vision ended that there is more to share, and I will be back with it. I don't know exactly when, but I will be back, and I want you to be here when I am. But for right now, in this moment, I want to leave you with the image I could not shake when the vision finally closed, standing in that prairie field with the golden grass bending in the wind, the massive storm clouds rolling in every direction, the amber light burning through the darkness, and then the sky splitting open, and that light. That living, breathing, warm, and weighty light pouring through the crack in everything that was dark and heavy and frightening, not removing the storm, not erasing the difficulty, just breaking through it, moving through the very center of it, unstoppable, undeniable, already arriving. He is coming. He is already in motion. And everything that feels like a storm right now is just the backdrop against which his arrival is going to be the most clearly visible thing anyone has ever seen. Hold on to that. Write it down. Carry it with you when this ends and you go back to your ordinary day. He is coming, he is close, and he is worth every single thing it costs to be found ready. Let me tell you something I didn't say earlier, something I left out because I wasn't sure how to say it, but I feel like I need to go back and fill it in because it matters. When I was standing in that field before any of the 7 things appeared, before the clock, before any of it, there was a moment where I looked down at the grass around my feet, and I noticed something. The roots of the grass were visible somehow, even though I was standing on solid ground, like the earth had become translucent just around my feet, just for a moment. And I could see how deep the roots went, how far down they reached. And the grass at the surface was bending dramatically in that wind, bending almost parallel to the ground. But the roots were not moving, not even a little. And I didn't understand why I was being shown that at first. It just seemed like a detail. But now, sitting here afterward, I think that was one of the most important things in the entire vision. Before he showed me the clock, before the crowds, before the church and the wave and any of the revelation, he showed me roots. He showed me what holds when everything above the surface is being driven sideways by wind. And the grass that was bending most dramatically, the longest blades, the ones that looked most alive and most affected by the storm, those were the ones with the deepest roots. They could bend further because they were held more securely. The depth was not limiting the movement, the depth was enabling it. And I think that is a picture of the believer in this season. The ones who can move most freely in what is coming are not the ones who are most protected from the storm. They are the ones who are most deeply rooted, the ones who have given years to the slow, invisible work of going down into Him, down into His Word, down into prayer that nobody sees and nothing in the visible world rewards. Those are the ones the storm will not be able to move, not because they won't feel it, they'll feel it more than anyone, the way the tallest grass felt the wind the most, but they will not be uprooted. I want you to ask yourself right now, and this is an honest question I'm asking myself too, how deep are my roots? Not how active am I in ministry, not how many Christian things am I consuming, not how good does my faith look from the outside. How deep are my roots? How much time have I given to the slow, invisible work? How much of my prayer life is conversation rather than request? How much of my quiet time is genuinely quiet? How much of what I know about God is something I've actually encountered versus something I've been told and carry secondhand? Because secondhand faith bends and breaks in a storm that requires firsthand faith, and the storm He showed me is requiring firsthand faith right now. There's something else I want to say about the second thing He showed me, the crowds of people not looking up. I've been thinking about this since the vision ended, and I want to try to go a little deeper into what I think He was communicating, because I don't think it was a simple condemnation of distraction. I think it was something more nuanced than that. The people in the vision were not doing bad things. Most of them were doing completely ordinary things, normal life things. And I don't think He was saying ordinary life is the problem. I don't think He was saying you need to stop working and stop having dinner with your family and stop living in the world. He created all of those things. He's not against normal life. But there was something about the orientation of the people in that vision. Their faces were completely, thoroughly, uninterruptedly angled downward. And I think the word He used in that moment was not distracted. He said they had stopped watching. Watching is different from constant vigilance or anxiety. Watching is an orientation of the heart. It's the difference between someone who is in the world and someone who has been absorbed by the world. It's the difference between eating dinner with your family and being fully present while also carrying in your heart this background sense that everything you're seeing is precious and temporary and He is close. Watching is not the absence of normal life. It is the presence of something underneath normal life, a deep water current of awareness and expectation that doesn't stop the life from happening but gives it a different quality, a different weight, an awareness that all of this, is happening in front of the backdrop of His imminent return, and that changes how everything feels and what matters and what doesn't. And He said, I am not asking my people to stop living. I am asking them to live while watching, to eat dinner with their families while watching, to do their work well while watching, to love the people around them while watching, because the watching is not a distraction from life. The watching is what makes life fully alive. The watching is what keeps eternity in view while the temporal is still very real and very present. Let me also go deeper into the fifth thing, the wave that is coming, because I don't think I gave it enough space the first time through. He showed me those faces, those wild and raw and unpolished faces of people coming from unexpected places. And I don't want you to reduce that to a vague, feel-good promise. He was very specific about what this will require from the church. He said, I am sending people to my body who are going to test your capacity for welcome, not test your theology about welcome. Test your actual lived practice of it. He said, some of them will make you uncomfortable. Some of them will come with questions you don't know how to answer. Some of them will come with wounds that require long patience. Some of them will come with habits that take years to fall away. And He said, I am watching to see whether my body will make room for what I am sending, or whether my body will require people to become more like the existing culture of the church before it will accept them. And that is a serious word, because I think there is a version of the church, and I have seen it, and I know you have too, that says we welcome everyone, but in practice, what that means is we welcome everyone who is already moving in our direction, everyone who is already relatively close to where we want them to be. But the people He was showing me were not close, they were far. They were from the far end of the field, and they were coming fast because He had met them in their mess and turned their whole world over, and they were going to show up unready for the structure and the unspoken rules and the cultural norms of the church. And the question He was asking was whether the church would be more committed to Him or to its own comfort and order. I think this is one of the most important practical applications of everything in the vision, because I think the wave he described is already beginning. I think the people are already showing up in some places, and the church's response to them in this early stage is setting a pattern for what comes next. So if you are in a church, if you lead anything in a church, if you have any capacity to influence culture in your church, hear this. Make room. Make room for mess. Make room for questions. Make room for people who look different and smell different and carry different histories. Make room for the wild and the raw and the undone, because those are the ones he is sending. And if we miss this wave because we were too attached to our own comfort, that is not something that can be easily undone. I want to go back to the sixth thing too, the presence carriers, because I said something there that I want to make sure landed right. He talked about yielded human vessels, and I know that language can sound passive or like you just disappear, like the goal is to have no self anymore. And I don't think that's what he meant. I think what he was describing is actually the most fully realized version of a human being, a person who has been so emptied of the things that are not them, the defenses and the performances and the false selves, that what remains is genuinely them, genuinely alive, genuinely present, and also genuinely full of him. I think the vision was not describing annihilation of self. It was describing the self finally freed to be what it was made to be, which is a container for divine life. Because here is what I keep thinking about. Every person in history who carried his presence in a way that changed everything around them, they were not blank or absent. They were more themselves, not less. The fire in them was their fire and his fire at the same time, and you couldn't separate them. And I think that's what he was inviting, not the erasure of who you are, the liberation of who you are into the fullness of what you were created to be, which requires being filled with him, because the thing that limits us from being fully ourselves is not actually ourself. It's the stuff that has been layered over ourself by the world and by sin and by fear. And when those things are surrendered, what's left is more genuinely you than anything you've ever experienced, and also more genuinely him. And that combination is what he is looking for to move through in this season. I've been trying to think about whether there's anything in the vision I haven't told you, and I want to make sure I tell you about one more thing, a smaller detail that happened right at the end, right before the light came through the sky in that final seventh moment. Just before everything changed, I noticed the prairie grass around me went perfectly still. The wind that had been blowing from the beginning of the vision, constant and pressing throughout all seven of the things he showed me, just stopped. Complete stillness for just a moment, and the silence was so total after all that wind that it was almost loud, and I stood in that stillness, and I felt my own breathing and my own heartbeat and nothing else. And then the sky split, and the light came. And I think that moment of stillness was its own message. I think he was saying that before the fullness of what is coming arrives, there will be a moment of strange quiet, not the absence of the storm. The storm was still there. The clouds were still churning above me. Nothing had resolved. But the wind in the field stopped. And I think in the days ahead, there may be a moment like that in the world, a moment that feels like a pause. And if and when you feel that stillness, when something in the atmosphere feels like it's holding its breath, don't sleep through it. Don't explain it away. Recognize it for what it is, the last breath of the old thing before the new thing arrives. And be ready. I know this has been a long time to sit with me. I know it's a lot to take in, and I want to honor your time and your trust in listening this long. So let me just leave you with this last thing, this one final image, and then I'll let you go. When I was a kid, I remember going to a summer camp in the middle of nowhere, and one night they took us out to a field, an actual open field, not unlike the prairie in the vision, and they told us all to lie down on our backs in the grass and just look up, and they turned off every light, every flashlight, every lamp in every building, everything. And it took a minute for the sky to appear, the real sky, the one that's always there but that we never see because of all our light pollution. And then it came, the stars, the whole unimaginable expanse of it. And I remember lying in that grass and for the first time in my young life, feeling very small and very held at the same time, both things simultaneously, the immensity of it and the intimacy of being nested inside it. That's the feeling I had at the end of the vision, standing in that field with his hand on my shoulder and the living light coming through the torn sky and everything in creation oriented toward it, very small and very held, both things at once, the immensity of what is coming and the intimacy of being known and kept and chosen to see it. And I want that for you. I want you to carry that tonight, the smallness and the heldness together, because that's who he is. He is the God for whom this whole vast history is one unfolding story moving toward its conclusion. And he also knows your name. He knows what you're afraid of. He knows what you're carrying. He knows what tonight cost you to sit with. And he is saying, you are not an accident. You were not an accident in that field. And you are not an accident watching this. He is coming. He is close. He is already moving. And he is worth every single thing it costs to be ready when he arrives.